Hi.
Hello.
Hello, you two. Hello, world.
Hello, everybody.
Where to begin?
Where to begin? Well, I want to give a little bit of a backstory of why I summoned you both, why I called you both here to my Facebook meeting room. Um, we were we were looking at these body classes, right? And you have one, Sylvia. You have one on in Mexico City, and Anthony and I had one on in Cancun. And we were looking at, I had this conversation with you a while ago, and you were like, "Yeah, like access is expanding. Do it in this." We were looking at moving it. Do it in Mexico City too, if you want. And it was interesting the stuff that came up with it because we were like, "Well, we don't want to compete," and all of this stuff. And Anthony and I were having a conversation, and I was like, "Hey, wait a minute. What if do either of us actually do this?" And so I want to have a conversation with you guys about it because competition, um, a huge thing that people play into in their lives, but also this thing of comparison, comparing themselves to others and creating from that space. And one thing I know about that is in order to do competition or comparison, you have to put yourself in judgment. And so Anthony was really cool with this because I was actually asking him questions about it. And I was like, okay, is it actually competition? And so let's see where we go with it. But that's basically where it started.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I'll just say like what was coming up for me. So we were trying to, have the 3-day body class in Cancun, as you were saying. It happens to be the same weekend that Sylvia is having her 3-day body class in Mexico City. And we were struggling finding venues in Cancun, right? It just wasn't happening. So what was it, about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? We're like, well, where does this class want to happen? Our class, yours and I's, Brendon. And I was thinking Mexico City. Now, I didn't know that Sylvia had a class planned at that time. And then someone's like, Sylvia's doing a class in Mexico City that weekend. And then I instantly was like, okay, then absolutely not. And and then I actually had the idea, maybe the three of us can get together and do a class or whatever, but that wasn't really reading. So I was like struggling with like sort of invading on Sylvia's territory, right? Because back when I became a 3-day body facilitator, I think it was in 2007, no, not 17, I don't know, whenever it was. I remember one of the facilitators who had been there from like the origin of 3-day body facilitators, like, don't ever schedule a class in the same city as another 3-day body facilitator. That was like the golden rule. So that's why I was like, I've had it in my head, right? And then, anyway, so then we're still trying to push Cancun, and it just wasn't happening, man. These venues were insane. They were always coming back with these little things, and it was clear that the class did not want to happen in Cancun. So we kept asking, where? And we're like, Mexico City. And then I again was like, no, we can't do that to Sylvia. And then the first word I did use is because I said, I don't want to do competition, right? Yeah. But what we got to later, what you're like, is that true? Is that really true for you in your world? I'm like, no, because I asked Gary a long time ago. I'm like, do I do competition? He's like, no. And I'm like, well, then when it comes up for me, what is that? And it wasn't coming up for me because I used the wrong word, because I know Sylvia doesn't do it either. Yeah. And he goes, no, it's when the times that it does come up for me is because it's in someone else's world, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't coming up in this case. What the word I should have used was, I felt like it was unfair. And it was cute because I called Sylvia about it. She's like, oh, so you mean that once you post the class, like all of a sudden no one's going to come to my class? I'm like, I didn't mean it like that.
No, wait, let me back up. What I really said before I said that was, fuck off.
Yeah.
But I loved that too. Like, see, the reason I wanted to do with this with you guys too was because there's so much in it that we can relate and people can relate to in their lives. And like when he said that, I was like, that we're three completely different people, three completely different beings. But also I know we're three people with very similar targets.
Yes.
And I see where we would put, like, you'd put something like competition as you would replace what you can create in the world with what you've decided you compete with, rather than like the conversation that we got to. You got to different things, Anthony. I'm sure it brought things up for you too, Sylvia.
Yeah.
with it. And it just like, I guess one thing for me is that I'm really grateful for with this is like when you can have something like that come up, but we just go, okay, hey, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
If I can add there, Brendon, too, because for me, when you first, you were the first one to have a conversation with me a little while ago, and it does creep in, and this is part of what Anthony, maybe you were saying, where we think it's competition, but there's something that shows up. And it was that quick little visit of this energy. And it's like, wait, one, it's like it's heavy, like it's not true. And then I had to be really clear, like, that isn't true for me. But everything else in your head wants to tell you that it is or what it's going to create. And it's like, it really has been. And I'm so grateful. This is where I know consciousness works in mysterious ways, because the invitation, I think, for all of us to really get present, like you said, we all have that same target. It's like, no, I would love for consciousness to be so big that we can be even in the same hotel. Like, what would that be like? Because it really is empowering people to know that they know. You will know. Whether you go to, say we were all three having a separate class, you go to Anthony's or Brendon's or my class or any other 3-day body class, these people are then choosing to have a consciousness and a communion with their body, perhaps that they've never been invited to before. Because that's the tools, those are the body process. It's not about, I have 2 people in my class, you have 50 and you have 100. It's like, hey, it's really what are we actually choosing to create with these tools? So for me, this, I'm so grateful because I now know in a different way that that is my target. And maybe I never voiced it. And now I'm like, with both of the conversations I had with both of you, it has been that willingness to go, damn, we are different. So Brendon, thank you for inviting this live, because that is the difference that we be when, by not going to competition and going, what are we really looking to create here?
Well, you know, it was interesting too. One of the things I said to Anthony when we were still having this conversation was, I was like, it was, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months ago, maybe a year ago, when you asked me to co-facilitate a class with you in Colombia. And I was like, yes. And I remember in my world then, like I still had a lot of stuff going on with image that I was getting through, but also not wanting to look at and different things. And I was like, I just had this thing in my world where, which I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is like, oh, I'm going to be like, I'm coming on your class. Like that's going to add something, you know, like that's going to, and I had all this shit with that. Right. And then everyone went, no, we don't want him. We actually want you, Sylvia. And we want it in Spanish. And I remember that because I kind of remember just the energy in my world of just going, man, you're a dick for looking at things like that. Like which is another part of why I'm really grateful to be able to have this conversation, because one of the things also that you said there, Sylvia, was that niggle came into your world for a moment.
Yes.
And I think we can all relate to that too, is where you either feed that and go into it, which means you're in competition, or you acknowledge it and you go, because like I said, in order to do competition, you have to make yourself less than, you have to be in judgment. But I think we can all relate to that, where we go, oh, well, like there's 3 of us now, like which one's like, you know, like, am I going to be less? And it's like, but using the tools and being in question with it. So
And one of the things I was really grateful when Anthony called me, because there was all these different things coming up. And as he was saying it, like it wasn't light, but, you know, and I got to play with Anthony. So I've known both of you for many, many years. And Anthony, you know, especially, and this,
were
when we
you
were
teasing him?
I was teasing him so bad. I was like, you're right. Now no one's going to come to my class. I think you need to pay my rent. It'll be all your fault.
I didn't even, you know, and I didn't mean it that way. I was really struggling with this whole moral compass thing about the golden rule, and that's really what was coming up.
So glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
like when you did too.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked me a question, Brendon. Like when we were on our meeting, and he's like, "Why don't you give, you know, like what is this really about?" And then I got to like the whole unfair thing. He's like, "Well, why don't you call Sylvia and see what her point of view is?" And I'm thinking to myself, I can really do that, but I don't want her to feel like she has to say yes because she knows that's the right thing to do. You know, it's never just one thing. It has all these energetic things, and then other doorways attached to it and more doorways attached to it. And then it becomes this intense mental mind fuck, right?
Yeah.
And then I knew that what needed to happen was I just needed to have a conversation with Sylvia. But at the end of the day, if she was not comfortable with it, I wouldn't have gone. You know what I mean? Like if she had said, no, I'm not cool with it, I'm like, okay, she's not cool with it. And that's it. Because for me, it was just all about sticking to that golden rule that I was told you don't do that to dishonor another facilitator back in the day.
Wow.
But it's become near impossible. There's so many facilitators. Like, you know, Access is growing so much. It's like, it's become almost impossible to rearrange our schedule because someone else is facilitating a class in the same city. It's we can't go by that anymore.
Well,
And
you go, Sylvia.
Well, I was just going to say, not too long ago, I think it might have been Simone, and there was another facilitator, maybe Amy Shine, doing a class in the same city, and
Right.
but that energy came up there as well, and they were like, "Hey, we if we're actually going to create more on this planet that we say we're looking to create, we got to go beyond that." And so I'm so grateful for this showing up at my front door, because it is that moment where it's like, what am I going to choose? Because this is where, like, I know you have this caring and kindness, Anthony. I could have easily taken advantage of that and said, no, dude, you're right. You shouldn't come.
Yeah.
Like, you guys figure something else out. Do it another weekend. You know, I could have gone so many places with that. But it's like, yeah. So it's like what you said, Brendon, too. It's like, what am I really, truly looking to create? And I'm hoping people like listen to this and really get that maybe it's time to start asking some different questions and really getting that there's no such thing as competition.
Right.
And that if we're truly asking for more consciousness on the planet, what can we be that might inspire our hosts, the people that attend the classes, the people that hear about it? Because in so many worlds, they're like, oh no, freak out. Like, what are we going to do? It's like, hey, let's have fun. Let's just have more of the energy where people know there's multiple classes going on at the same time.
Yeah. And everybody's thriving, because at the end of the day, it's like we love the tools. You know, we know what the tools have done for us on a personal level, and we love facilitating the tools. And yeah, and it's like I don't know. To me, it's a success for all of us if all of our classes are thriving.
Yeah, but I do gotta say, someone did mention, but Sylvia, those are 2 men. Everybody's gonna go to their class.
Did somebody say that to you? Oh God, unbelievable.
But you know, and it's so funny because we can go in so many ways. But for me, it's like, wow, what difference are we that we can begin to choose and be? Because if I would have said, no, it doesn't work for me, and you choose not to come, it's like how many people in our lives are still asking that we play small so that they can still fit in our world, rather than like, hey, I'm willing to lose anyone and anything, but this I get is going to create more consciousness. So let's go.
Yeah. Well, and my God, you just made me realize, Sylvia, just with that person, even if they were teasing you in that comment, that I'm so aware of that, even if it's a joke, it still bothers me. You know what I mean? And I know people are going to have a gazillion points of view about why it's not a good thing to do it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'd almost rather not have to deal with the awareness of that than to choose the thing that ultimately will create greater, which is having the conversation with you, looking at what's underneath this, just to avoid the awarenesses of other people's point of view. And something that's just really hitting me today, we just watched this show, is how much people love to, in this reality, people love to destroy other people. They love to watch the fall of someone. They make a gazillion dollars over it. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm like, what a fucking ugly world this can be. Like, right? And I'm like freaking the fuck out. But we're doing something different. Mm-hmm. But we're also aware of other people who want to come to the class, who might be hosting you, be like, not a good idea, Sylvia, shouldn't have done that. Right? But that's also a presumptive reality too, because maybe we're going to end up with 5 people in the class, right? You know what I'm saying? Why does it have to be either or?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's okay. So everything that is, can we destroy it?
Yes. Yes.
Right, wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all 9 shorts, boys, perverts and beyonds. You know what I find interesting?
And I just wanted to go back to that. Well, the golden rule was like, once you became a 3-day body facilitator, you do your very best not to schedule a class in the same city as another 3-day body facilitator.
Well,
To
and the
avoid
golden rule,
That's what
and
I
the-
was told when I first became a 3-day body facilitator.
yeah, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Yeah, it's like, but you know, the interesting thing there too, when you were talking about that stuff, Anthony, was like you would, what I see with all of that is we would destroy what we know is actually possible to make somebody else's reality that's less than real. And I see where, I see where I've done that so much throughout my life too, where it's like, oh, well, I don't want to step into this because people will think this. Let me make that more real, rather than more so of that energy of following following what is actually true for you.
Yeah.
And that too, like having so much trust of yourself to know when somebody goes, oh, you're doing competition. Know this as your golden rule is if somebody's accusing you of something, they themselves are doing it. When
Right.
somebody accuses you of anything, they themselves are doing it. And what if you could have so much trust for you where it's like, okay, cool. I know me better than that. I know I'm actually not doing competition. I know I actually do desire to empower people. I know to the best of my ability, I am being in question. So, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I remember years ago when I started Access, I co-facilitated with someone, and it was someone that in my world I thought knew more, was a better facilitator, just all their experiences with all the other things they had done. And I remember in the middle of our facilitation, she started to speak or say something, and I thought, oh wow, that's brilliant. I should just shut up. Like, and there was that moment where I started to shrink and go, maybe I should just go sit in the audience, but that energy. And I remember the whisper of Gary's words. And this is literally maybe my first class I ever co-facilitated. It was an intro we were doing. So this was early access. And I remember Gary saying, I'm almost going to, wow. He said, there's no such thing as competition. He goes, you have an energy, and he was talking to the class, but you have an energy that delivers the tools and bees the tools in a different way that is going to invite different people. And the gift of having facilitators all around the world with all these different specialties and foundations and all is that we each invite a different energy of what people either are asking for or the way that they can receive. And I thought, and in that moment, it's like, oh, we might be saying the same thing. And then all of a sudden there was that space of like, receiving me again. And then we continued, the class and the intro where I was receiving everything she said. And then at the end, I remember this lady thought, did you guys rehearse that? Like, that was beautiful. You went back and forth, but it wasn't. And I get that part of the gift of gifting and receiving from each other is that space of you get that there's something you are gifting that no one else can gift like you.
Yeah.
And for me, I get that those early words, even though Gary says we often don't listen, that has stayed with me ever since. So this is why I know competition isn't real. And do thoughts and different things come in my head? Of course, do I go into comparison? I can perceive that energy. And one other thing I'd like to share that years ago also showed up was the word, the energies, competition, comparison was coming up a lot in my world. And of course, being new to the tools, interesting point of view, puck and pod, shoo away. And I asked Dane about that. And I said, hey, Dane, these energies are showing up. And he goes, well, what do you think is going to happen? I'm all, oh shit. I think that, he goes, what do you think is going to happen if you let them in? I'll become them. So I was actually resisting those energies because I thought I was going to become them. And then he was all like all the judgments we have of competition, of comparison, of all of that. And once I let my barriers down and I received them, I realized, oh, they're not true. I'm actually not going to be something that's not true for them, but they're also not right or wrong. So this is where if you do find yourself in competition, it's like, okay, have fun, use it to your advantage. But if it's not true for you and it is a heaviness, then know that maybe you have something different to offer it. So anyways, both of those moments that just really stuck to me of this, if I wasn't resisting and reacting, what is true for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say with that too, a lot of people have probably been judged as being competitive or doing competition. And so anywhere you have that too, where it's like, oh, I judged myself, or I've been judged for a lot of doing competition and being competitive, then in order to not be it, people prove against it. So then it's almost like that thing too of, like, I could see where I would have done that in the past. I would have proved against being competitive by not having the class in Mexico City either, to prove something. Look, I'm not being competitive, while also thinking I was competitive and having the judgment of myself of being competitive, which is why I'm proving against not being it. And that's so huge in our lives. Like, I remember having a conversation with Gary once where he got me on this thing of, I always had this thing in my world where I would prove that I'm a nice guy. Like, oh, do nice things and prove that I'm a nice guy. But I never had, like, that was never my point of view about myself. It was that I was a total fucking asshole, and let me prove I'm a nice guy so people like me. And he got me on it, and I was like, he goes, you're not a nice guy, you're just proving it. And I was like, holy fuck. Because the other thing with that too is you lose access to what's actually true with proving it. And so I just bring that part into it too, because how much of what you choose is proving against what you've decided you are.
Yeah.
And thank you for that, because growing up in a family of 5 girls, it was always that energy.
Oh,
Yeah,
man,
that
5 Latinas.
one right after the other in age.
Mamacita.
But it was also that, like, if I was ever too much or taking up too much space, as people would call it, it was always like, oh, like somehow that sense of either competition or being too much. So one of the other things I said to Anthony when we talked is like, please turn it up. Like, I want to play with people who are willing to play and invite me to greater and bigger. I have this funny story with my friend Connor that, we were playing tennis and he was just like, just kind of tossing the ball back and forth. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, he's all, well, you're a girl. I'm like, and he goes, well, I've been taught to be kind to girls and not, be the strong man. I'm all, please turn it up. I want to play. I don't know if it's the word to be challenged, but I want to be invited to be more. I want to be invited to step up, to acknowledge more. And so whether it be a game of tennis or whether it be, to really invite me to go, hey, what's true for me here? Am I actually really acknowledging what's true? That's the game I'd like to play.
Yeah.
Like don't play with me like I can't. If I have that point of view, please invite me to something more or go without me. Because if you go without me, that's going to be such a greater invitation going, fuck, all right, what am I going to choose?
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I'm having flashbacks of so many memories right now. It's like a facilitation about proving that I don't do competition. I remember my friend, just when I was a kid, 9, 10 years old, and we play sports, and just in the neighborhood. And I loved to play, but I wasn't competitive. But because I was a little bit of a better athlete than he was, and being smaller, it bothered him. And I didn't have a father really to give me advice. So he would go home to his father and be like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Be like, well, Anthony's competitive, And then he would tell me how competitive it was. He was also the same person that would sort of humiliate me in front of everybody else all the time and always say how intense I was and I need to calm down. And so from there, I've worked my ass off to not be that ever again, out of fear of losing friends, out of being too much, whatever the case may be. And really, it was just the enthusiasm to play. And in playing, maybe it comes across as being competitive or an energy that might be too much, but it was exciting for me. And so it's interesting how now I'm getting all these like memories of where I was made wrong for it.
Yeah.
Well, if I can add real quick, because I have also another friend that I was playing tennis with, Emily Lau.
You have so many friends.
I do.
Such a popular girl.
Was it naked? Was it naked tennis?
I'll leave it to your imagination.
Just say yes.
Just say yes.
Just entertain him.
But it was so great because we were playing and, balls going back and forth. And so I had the experience with Connor. I said,
whose balls?
Exactly. And I'm like, hey, have you ever played tennis? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, turn it up. That girl got that ball and went whack. And I was like, whoa, okay. maybe if we're going to play anything with the ball back and forth, we'll have to change, your
Yeah.
level of competence to just, let's play the ball. But she has a level of competence in tennis and force, like that fierce game that she knows, that I thought, wow, I had no idea she had that. So it's like,
Yeah.
how many of us have people in our lives that are hiding this potency that they have in B, and we could keep relating to them like they don't. And that invitation to go, hey, what else do you got there? And to actually perceive that, I'm all like, wow, I might not be the best playmate for you in this game, but where else could we play?
Right.
Well,
right.
that's actually a good point though, because you can't get access to what you're actually capable of when you're doing competition either. You can only access what you're competing against. You can only get to that level. And so it's like that man, that whole proving thing, I'm glad you brought that part up too, Anthony, because I think a lot of people you get that. It's like, holy shit.
Wow. Yeah, I'm getting smacked in the face with the whole proving that I'm not something when I actually am.
Yeah.
In
man,
other areas, not with this, but just yeah, whatever. Pop and pod. A lot of things.
It all belongs to
not
you.
just with this. I'm just been processing a lot of stuff lately.
But cool in the sense that, I wonder how much is coming up for the people even watching. And if you guys have questions and want to ask something, please do.
Well, let me give a tool with that too that adds in some of the questions that we use in Access. Like if you're looking at something and you're kind of stuck in it, is first of all start with what am I avoiding?
Mm-hmm.
Let an energy come up with that, because, and usually it is an energy when you ask that question of what am I avoiding, because you're avoiding it. So having a cognitive awareness of it usually isn't there to begin with. And then everything that is POC and pod, right and wrong, good and bad, pod and POC, all nine shorts, boys, perverts and beyond. The next part is who or what am I defending for or against with this? Everything that brings up, because usually you'll find something in that. Like if we look at something with like competition, man, you could look at it and go, who am I defending for or against with this? Oh man, I'm totally defending my mother's reality or my father's reality, or I'm defending against where I was judged as that. Everything that is POC and pod. But the last question with this is, what am I proving with this? And with this, bringing it up here, like it really is one way to eliminate choice, is to have the need to prove.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's so funny as you're saying that, like I've noticed where I've done this opposite, where I'm proving that I'm dumb or I can't in many ways, to actually defend that I know I'm not. If that's it's like this flip part of what I'm still using to play small.
Right.
Which I don't like to play small. If you know me at all, it's like this really convoluted thing. So I'm so grateful that you're bringing up these tools here, Brendon, and these questions, because if you don't have to have it figured out now, but if there's different energies coming up, use these questions, use the clearing statement, and just let it unravel itself and see what else shows up that may be an awareness that you may not have now, but will show up later if you continue to use the tools.
True story.
Awesome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for this conversation.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. So my next question is, whose class are you going to go to?
What part of the city? Yes.
Yeah. Like, who are you going to choose?
Will you choose the right class?
Yeah. Will you? Are you going to choose Sylvia, or are you going to choose me and Anthony? How are you going to do it? How are you going to get that?
And what's going to be your reason?
Yeah. What are you avoiding and defending if you choose one of us over the other?
So grateful. And for those of you that don't know what a 3-day body class is, explore it. Yeah. I mean, what a gift. And I adore you both so much. I am so grateful.
I adore you both too.
Likewise.
Yeah. My life.
And I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for what it brought up, and I hope it contributed to people. And how does it get any better than that?
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. All right. Well, love you guys.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.